Good evening. I think I'm nicely fitted out to take you on a short journey to see what the future of social work would look like. I think it's important, building on what Limpo has just mentioned about the need for trust and also the need for a holistic approach to tackle any of our issues in this small country of ours. I think that will be possible only if I can take you through why those of us who are in this sector do what we do. Let me share the brief story of Namga Dem. She passed away 4 years ago at 91, but she lived to see her dream fulfilled. Namga Dem told our field officers that she really thinks that her future will be in her bago. So the bago is exactly where she sat, and she dreamt this dream of actually being able to go and watch her grandchildren from a second-storied house, two-storied house. So that was her dream. So how did that translate into, how was it achieved? Not because Tarayana went there and did it, but Her Majesty went and inspired them to help themselves. So they mobilized as a community, came together to help each other. Each one of the 17 families there contributed labor in helping each other build their house. Young, old, everybody. And there's also a very good story that there was one gentleman, and my field officers called him the grasshopper. Whenever he had to go and contribute labor, he was sort of slacking away and sort of not really giving his 100%. But as the days came closer to his own house being constructed, he was really worried and scared. Now, would the others come and help him? Would they also reciprocate like in his kind? So he said that he had sleepless nights, worrying about what if others did what he had been doing. And so there was this moment of realization, and I think that was true across the communities that Tarayana serves, is that turning moment. And I think if you've reached that turning moment, you don't really have to go and mobilize them anymore. They're ready for change. So Namga Dem lived a good 10 years after she was in her new beautiful home, sent Her Majesty a lovely message via WeChat. I think one of our field officers had recorded that, thanking Her Majesty for giving them the confidence to dream as well as to implement and build their own future. So her generation, her daughter now lives in the house with so many grandchildren. I think there were 14 at the last count, and I hope it stops there, because otherwise we'll have an issue for the next generation. So that was a small community in Rukha. And now we're talking about, are we only going to look at what can be done? Building a house, one would think, is quite a small task, easy task for a community to handle. Could it be expanded to include other developmental projects? And we're very happy to report that Dali, one of the remotest villages in Shemgang, came together and requested for support. They had no road, no electricity, and no school. Basically, that was sort of a forgotten, little idyllic community. For us as an outsider, it is an idyllic world, but their reality was that of a very difficult and tiresome living conditions. So we embarked on this near impossible task of seeing whether this small community of just 26 households at that time, whether they would come together to take up a big project. So electricity is something that is life transforming, particularly for women and children. And we felt that if we could give them the confidence to do it themselves. So this is one of the first projects of this nature that is done totally owned and operated by the community themselves. Of course, just recently they now have the hydropower connectivity thanks to democratization processes and all of our MPs promising the world to community members. They have now been connected to the grid, although when we first chanced upon this community, they were definitely on the list that will never get onto the grid, and that was the reason why we went there in the first place. But after having put in so much of effort in building their own powerhouse, carrying all of that, I mean, it's not, there's no road there, so they had to carry for about 7 hours all of the transformers and the materials that went into construction, as well as the electrification itself. So how did they manage to do that? There was only the operator, Sange. He was a class 8 dropout, early school leaver. He was the only person who actually had some semblance of an education. So he was the guy in charge. And under his guidance and under his wing, there were other young individuals who were very enthusiastic. And they went, they trained, we brought in trainers from outside, as well as send them on an excursion and a learning exposure visit to a similar setup in Nepal. And they came back very enthused. And they led this entire project. It's still working. Right now, they're in negotiations with the BPC, I think, to see how they might be compensated, because they're in the process of trying to hand this facility over to the BPC now that they're connected. But they're working on the compensation because they did put in their hard labor to begin with. I could go on talking about a lot of stories like that throughout Bhutan. Tarayana is now working in quite a few places, and you might have read recently that the organization was also rewarded, they award the silver, what was it? I forget the name of that one, but the World Habitat has given the silver thing for the housing constructions, 2,000 plus. But we cannot move forward without looking at, did Tarayana achieve 100% success rate? Definitely not. So it's, what makes the difference is that we gave ourselves permission to fail and learn and try again, because we're working with communities. And this is a good, as good a story as any, because the members, I mean, we went and we consulted with them, and they said they're fine. They would like a project like this. They wanted this project. We put together a project, trained the people, the field officers who were to go and guide this project through. We even managed to find a small stash of fund, and we sent them to the village, and there we met with a very stoic resistance. They did not want that project. And this is after having put in more than 6 months of consultation and the project being designed together, co-created together. And it baffled us. But fortunately for us, another group across the river took up that, another community took up that project. But we were not satisfied. We wanted to see, we know our people, we know the language. We are supposed to understand what they want. When they tell us they want this, did it really mean they wanted it? So we didn't understand that. And fortunately for us, we had, my sister Kyunga went back, we requested her to go and find out the reason as to why they rejected it. And for a very simple fact, she came back rather bemused and told us that you overlooked a very important factor. Nettle, stinging nettle and nettle products were used as the taxation, what they would contribute, and therefore this association, for a simple reason like that, from last year they took it up again, and that is like a delay of 17 years, but we didn't give up. we kind of kept on going back and saying, well, it isn't that. The other side of the river, they're making a lot of money from this natural resource which is abundant in your community, so why don't you take up? So of course we kind of said that these opportunities are there and it's up to you to take up. So now finally after 17 years they have requested, they said, can you teach us how to do it? Our foreparents, our grandparents, I think they knew how to do it, but we've kind of lost that art. Can you come back and help us? So this is, in fact, the team right there, the Jangbi, the Menpas themselves, who requested and are now starting a vibrant culture of trying to weave their own clothes. And because they are now on the tourist map, and the visitors want to see them in their in their traditional garments, in their traditional crafts. So there is value finally being appreciated in that. So this is just one example of the mistakes we've made and the learnings. We think we know, but even when they say yes, sometimes it could be no, and so we're very, very cautious. This happened very early on in our journey, and so that has guided our decisions in program and project selections. Now, moving forward, I'm sorry the slide is not included here, but moving forward, it is all about the use of the trust building. I think why Tarayana and many of our civil society organizations are able to be more effective and efficient is because of the trust factor, the trust that the communities have in, and also the confidence they have in being assisted the whole way, not just get started and sort of, yeah. I think the Menpas helped us realize that they just told us what they thought we wanted to hear in the beginning, not really what they wanted. And so that's been a very important lesson. Moving forward, I think the civil society, social work as we know it, is part of what civil society does. And civil society is growing in importance. It is not just to complement government initiatives, but sometimes to also egg them on a path that is useful, that is helpful, and also it gives us the flexibility to take up trial and error. The piloting phase can be done by civil society without having to lose our face in any way. So once these are proven, then these could be scaled, taken up to scale by government. And using technology, modern methods of reducing drudgery, I think in the artisanal workspace is something that we're working at next. I guess all of us will have to acknowledge that we are social workers at heart, be it within our societies, within our own families. I think Bhutanese by nature are more giving, and this Tonglen, the giving and taking aspect of it, we take it very seriously. And I think why the pandemic, why we wear masks or whatever, is not so much that you would get it, but you're worried that in case you might be the one spreading it. And so when you have that innate nature, I think we are all social workers at heart. And so our future, we just have to get ourselves better organized, also get better educated in policies and in programming, in being able to communicate. So building capacities at the grassroots becomes crucial, particularly if democracy is to succeed, if we are to make sense in a very, very fast changing world. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention.